Hio noadi klanugwa gwadliasa flax dwas kuti flax abuka east klanugwa east du gokoit guklanugwa nala auch gayasika kans NRT kans dala kans balaos sukas nugas kans egem agua. I always started my language because our ancestors are listening, has taught that. My English name is Ayla Brown. My traditional name is Noadzi. I'm the strategic advisor to the Heiltsuk Climate Action team, and we've received quite a lot of dala from the New Relationship Trust, and it's really empowered our work. We started actually with federal funding from the Indigenous Off-Diesel Initiative, which allowed us to do deep community engagement. For those of you who don't know, we're in the middle of the Central Coast. We're an island community. We're rural and remote, so like fly in or a 6-hour ferry after a 5-hour drive to the top of Vancouver Island. We are off-grid, so we have a tiny microgrid, and we have 6 diesel generators that run our community when the power goes out in the winter, which, as you can imagine, is quite often. So we were talking to our community about climate action, and we're like, what do you guys want to do? Like, what kind of projects? And they started talking about climate grief and like how our relationship to our homelands and our waterways and our animal relatives were so disturbed. And we started looking at the climate forecasting, and you guys may not know this, but within 40 years, all pelagic fish are going to disappear from our waters. That's salmon, herring, anything that's a finfish and is at the top of the water is going to be gone. That's our entire food system. As land-based, place-based people, we are already feeling it. The mismanagement from the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, the clearing out of those waters, and we, like I said, have a very tiny economy, an average income of $19,000 a year per community member, very much a subsistence fishing community. The majority of our calories were still coming from the waters, and there wasn't any fish. And so when we started ranking things and the community did the ranking, food sovereignty was the #1 concern. Of course, how do we make sure that people are full? The next concern, of course, was housing. And we never had these problems before. We're big house people. We were able to house and feed people in abundance. So these were like really pressing concerns for our community. And we started looking at the data. Our houses, which we were burning diesel to heat, were creating 60% of our greenhouse gas emissions. We were looking at the climate impacts, and we're like, what are we going to do? And so we came up with some solutions and came to NRT. And what's not up here is that you guys also funded our heat pump project. So in previous years, not this year. So we eliminated 60% of our greenhouse gas emissions in 2 years, just gone. And that was only possible through the funding for the heat pump project. And also, our houses consume like 3 times the amount of electricity as any other house in BC. It's just because they're CMHC homes, we're in a cold, damp environment. So those heat pumps transform people's lives. But then what we realized is the houses are still inefficient. Even though we had better heating, cleaner heating, we weren't emitting greenhouse gases. So you guys funded that through the climate action piece. But then we looked at the houses, and they're still inefficient. We didn't change anything about the structure of the houses. We just gave them better heat. And so they're still having to use tons of electricity. And so that's where the demand side management piece came in. Putting in airflow exchanges, putting in proper insulation, dealing with the mold. A lot of our houses have mold, like really addressed a safety issue. So healthy Heiltsuk homes are safe, and they're affordable. All of the additional demand side management pieces allow people to have much lower hydro bills. So when I'm talking about high hydro bills, I'm talking $1,700 every 2 months. Like, that is exponentially ridiculous. We also pay the highest rates of any community for electricity because we're not on the grid. We're on a microgrid. It's like an aging grid. There's all kinds of issues. So we're looking now, we just got funded for hydrogen, because if we can get hydrogen storage cells in the community, it can move some of that stress from this tiny microgrid and being reliant on an independent power producer that isn't owned by the community, and BC Hydro that's charging us rates. They're literally 3 times higher than the next rate lowest down to us, just because of where we are. So our energy sovereignty was also really important. The Healthy Heiltsuk Homes really allows us to look at the structural integrity of our homes. The hydrogen project will allow us to look at energy sovereignty. And then that other top priority was food. How do we feed ourselves? So that's where we started looking at aquaponics for food security, because what we realized is we're not farmers. We don't know too much about that. And also a really, like I said, land-based people, majority of our protein and fat calories still coming from the ocean, looking at our climate forecasting, no pelagic fish in 40 years. So we looked at aquaponics. And then we went to the community and said, what do you guys think about aquaponics? And their first thought, fish farms. Right? And so we had some work to do, and the NRT came up and was actually there filming the community engagements, and literally saw the community change their mind about aquaponics in front of them, because it's not ocean-based, it's in a tank, and actually it's going to be built in our old fish plant that hasn't seen a salmon season in 7 years. So we're taking a big giant facility that's basically sitting there empty, that hasn't had a real purpose in quite a long time, and turning it into a food security project for our nation. And so we're going to start that build in January. So we've addressed the things, right? The first priority of the community, food sovereignty, and then housing, and then energy sovereignty. And it's through these different streams that have allowed us to really look long-term. And we're going to be one of the only communities in Canada that hits net zero by 2030. We're going to have 0 greenhouse gas emissions, for sure. And that's a big part from the money that's available. Because I told you we have a really small economy and no own source revenue. But this money has allowed things to be transformative, and the aquaponics projects will create jobs. We've used all local contractors to do the demand side management piece. We trained people to be energy auditors, so now they can do it in our community. They can redo them after we've done the renovations, so to check, and they can go to other communities. So it's not just about the money completing these projects, it's about also growing our people's capacity. And that's been a key part of how this money's been at work. This is our story, and we are really grateful to NRT and how it has been able to transform the lives of our community members in terms of these top priority areas, and empowered Heiltsuk to do the work.